Hello, my name's Charles Leyland, Managing Director of Leyland Private Asset Management. I'm here with industry doyen and legend, Alan Kohler, who's a 50-year veteran in the industry. Welcome, Alan.
49, Charles.
Oh, is it? Oh, we'll celebrate.
Get it right.
50-year anniversary.
No, well, it'll be 50 this year sometime.
So I wanted to talk to you about your history in the industry. So you started out as a cadet, is that right, at the Australian?
Well, a copy boy, actually, making coffee.
Right.
And doing the filing.
Yes.
So that's where a lot of people started in journalism, in those days anyway.
In those days, yeah, I can imagine. And then you went up through the ranks at the Australian?
I got a cadetship after a period as a cadet. As a copy boy, I got a cadetship there and did a 4-year cadetship. I went overseas, travelled around Australia a bit, went overseas, came back to Australia in 1978, got a job in The Age and for a year, and then was hired by the Financial Review, 1979, to work with Bob Gottliebson on the Chanticleer column.
Right.
So he and I did it together for 12 months, and then he went off to start Business Review magazine, and I was on my own doing Chanticleer. In 1985, I was made editor of the Financial Review. After 3 years as editor, I went back to Chanticleer for a few years. I then spent a brief period as an analyst for a stockbroker, James Capel.
Right.
I didn't like stockbroking, so I went back into journalism, got a job in the Australian, and then I got a job as the editor of The Age, and that was 1992.
Right.
When I was appointed editor of The Age. I finished up as editor of The Age in 95. I joined the ABC then.
Oh, that's right.
So I've been at the ABC 25 years. I was actually on the 7:30 report at the time, 95. Decided to start Eureka Report 2005 with the backing of John Wiley and Mark Carnegie. And we then also started Business Spectator, which is an online financial publication, in 2007. That was just before at the beginning of the GFC. And then we sold those businesses to News Corp in 2012.
Right. And now you're back home at the Eureka Report after a stint with a constant investor, and you've then merged all those businesses back into the InvestSmart group.
So News Corp sold Eureka Report to InvestSmart, which is a small listed financial business, and I left at that point and wanted to start my own newsletter that I owned 100%. Didn't have investors and shareholders to boss me around. So I did that, but it didn't really work. It was okay, but InvestSmart came to me and after a couple of years of that and said, why don't we buy the Constant Investor off you and you come back and run Eureka Report, and we merged the Constant Investor into Eureka Report. I said, sure, let's do that.
And along the way, you've also managed to find time to write a number of books.
Have written a book or two.
Yeah, so that's really a fantastic 49 years, isn't it? What would the Alan Kohler sitting here tell the Alan Kohler who started making coffee all those years ago?
I guess I'd say there's not much I'd change, to be honest. It's been a rich and interesting career, so I wouldn't want to suggest for a moment that there's been a problem. There hasn't been. I suppose the one thing I'd say is to the young Alan Kohler and to any other young person starting out is there is a benefit in sticking with something. There's a benefit in building up. So the 25 years I've been with the ABC has involved building a knowledge and a reputation and an expertise that I think is irreplaceable. Whereas earlier on in my career, I jumped around a bit. I worked for The Age for a year and then Chanticleer for a little bit and then this. And so I was kind of a bit all over the place. And I think there's a tendency for young people these days also to move around a fair bit. And I think that actually there's a really solid benefit in sticking at something for a long time, even though it might seem like it's boring.
Well, yeah, and within that, the style of news seems to have changed, both in its delivery format, obviously from the old newspapers to the online format, and in its style. We have things like fake news and pieces that are driven very much by clicks. So there's instant feedback, I guess, to journalists. And what's your observation of the changing style of journalism and media?
Well, look, we started off with 24-hour news, cable news, and that was a big change. That was before the internet, really. With the internet came Facebook and Google and Twitter and Instagram and so on. So social media has made a further dramatic change to news. And I suppose the fundamental problem with that is that none of these outfits, Facebook in particular, which has got such a large number of readers, doesn't have the business model to check the stuff that's being published. So whereas historically publishers check what's published, that's what you do. You have journalists who write something and then a sub-editor checks it, and often in the US in particular, they have fact-checkers who check all the facts before something's put into the New York Times, and that's still the case. Facebook doesn't check a thing, really. They respond to complaints, and they have rooms full of people who are going over stuff that's been complained about, but they actually, when Mark Zuckerberg was challenged about, in particular, political advertising not being true, he said, well, we are happy to leave it to our readers to decide.
Right.
And so they are actually deliberately publishing untruths, right? So I think that is a big change. And the business models of social media will never allow checking of stuff before it's published, because there's too much of it. There's just billions and billions of stuff going out there. It's just impossible to check it, right? Because it's all being produced by the readers. And so I think that is a big deal.
Unintended outcomes of an open society, isn't it?
Yeah.
One thing that hasn't changed, though, which I'm not sure if it annoys you as much as it annoys me, but financial journalists, you do a great job. You talk about charts and you let the viewer make up their own mind. But a lot of media journalists seem to want instant gratification. They want market forecasts, very, very specific forecasts. What's your observation or advice to those people that are wanting basically forecasts which are proven to be incorrect? It's impossible, as we know, to predict anything in the short term, whether it be the share market or interest rates or commodity prices or anything. Did you have an opinion on that?
Well, it's even harder to predict something in the long term.
Yeah.
So, I mean, predictions are about the future. The future is unknowable. So, I mean, it's completely worthless, really, in my view. I mean, I think a forecast only has any meaning or any value as an expression of someone's opinion about the present. And so if somebody forecasts something, maybe that's got value because it'll tell you what they think about now, and that in that case that's got some value, but their view about the future is worthless, really.
Sure. We talked earlier about the different firms with whom you've worked, and over the years the political differences to me seem to have exacerbated between the News Corp press and the Fairfax Now, Channel 9 press, and the ABC separately as well. You've managed to work concurrently for both and remain politically agnostic, which is a great achievement. Has that been by design, or are you a fantastic diplomat, or is there a secret to that?
Well, I didn't plan to work for News Corp on the Australian and the ABC. As I mentioned, I've been at the ABC a long time, so I was at the ABC kind of first. I ended up working for News for the Australian because we sold our business to them. And I was on a 4-year, as part of the contract, I was on a 4-year earn-out. That was 2012. That contract finished in 2016, but I had no reason to leave or stop writing for them at that point. I renegotiated the deal with the Australian so that instead of working kind of full-time for them, writing every day, we came back to 2 columns a week in 2016. That was 3 or 4 years ago. So I've been writing 2 columns a week for them. They leave me alone. They let me write what I want to write, even if I'm in favour of action against climate change. They're fine with it. They don't tell me what to write, so it's fine. I mean, I don't really have a problem.
Over the years, do any of the interviews you've made stand out as being interesting or memorable?
Not individually. I mean, the person I suppose that I've enjoyed interviewing the most would be Paul Keating, because he's had such a fantastic brain and really was interesting to talk to, always has been, still is. Apart from him, politicians are terrible to interview because all they want to do is get out of the interview with their skin on.
It's the politics, isn't it?
The same goes for large company CEOs, really. So the other people that I enjoy interviewing now are small company CEOs.
Well, that was what you did with the Constant Investor.
And I still do now for Eureka Report. I interview small company CEOs, 2 or 3 of them a week, and it's great. You know, this morning I interviewed the CEO of a company called Piedmont Lithium, which is a US company that's got a project in North Carolina. The bloke I interviewed was in New Jersey. It's a little company, 100 million market cap, dual listed on NASDAQ and then the ASX, and really it was such an interesting conversation. And but you talk to a CEO, a top 50 or a top 100 CEO, they're media trained. Their job is to not tell you anything, to not get into trouble. Yeah. So that's So I can't tell you a single interview that stands out, but that's certainly, broadly speaking, that it's best to talk to people who tell you something.
And has anyone stood out as having an influence, a large influence on your career?
I suppose the main person who I'd nominate, 2 people really, Bob Gottliebsen, who hired me in '79 to work with him on Chanticleer, and we've been friends ever since. And I've tried to, wherever possible, emulate Bob, his approach to the job and his integrity and the way he goes about it. I've always tried to model myself on him, and he also taught me a fair bit early on. And a bloke named Max Such, who was my boss at the Financial Review, and he was editorial director of Fairfax, and he appointed me editor of the Financial Review, and was really the guy who kind of picked me out in a way, and in a way is responsible for my, for me being where I am.
Alan, we're in the middle of a volatile market. At the moment we've got the coronavirus. Over 50 years there's been any number of panics, if you like to call it that. How does this compare with the panics you've seen over the period?
I was just reflecting today, actually, that this is the first time I've seen a true black swan. Most of the panics within the market have been more or less predictable. They're a result of a boom most of the time. The 87 crash with 30% on 1 or 2 days kind of resulted from the market doubling in the prior 12 months. And also then, there was the Bundesbank put up interest rates. There was a couple of events. It wasn't predicted. Nobody, and I didn't predict it, but it wasn't like a black swan, really. Well,
the 87 crash only gave back chronologically 6 months of gains.
Yeah. So there's that. The GFC again. I mean, it was a bubble in US housing and mortgages, excesses in banking. Kind of led to it in a sense. It was, obviously, you could call the collapse of Lehman Brothers in September 2008 a black swan in the sense that it was an event that wasn't predicted, but really it was the culmination of a series of collapses that had occurred throughout the previous 12 months. But the coronavirus, now that is a black swan, and nobody has any idea how to deal with it, really.
The reaction's as much of a fascinating insight into human behaviour as much as the virus itself.
Well, of course, and we've seen China basically shut the country down in order to control it, which has worked. But the economic cost of doing that is enormous. And now we've seen Italy quarantine the entire country Well, crikey, I mean, this is massive.
It's pretty exciting.
So, in a way, we've got two black swans because the rupture of the alliance between OPEC and Russia in the oil market. I mean, you could say that was kind of predictable in the sense that how long could Russia go along with OPEC? But you know, it was a shock, you know, and the oil prices collapsed. So it's actually a double whammy. I mean, the oil price collapse really is not directly. Coronavirus is part of the background to it because of the fall in demand. But still, the fact that Saudi Arabia has launched a price war and Russia has pulled out of the deal is a separate thing. So we've got two things going on at once now.
So it's up there.
Oh, it is entirely up there.
Well, Alan, thanks. One last question. What's next for Alan Kohler?
Well, I imagine eventually retirement. I'm 67. I'm pretty happy doing what I'm doing. My wife would like me to retire. I don't play golf. That's my problem. So I can't really retire because I don't play golf.
Well, they say if you love what you do, you're retired every day.
That's something like that.
Alan Kohler, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Charles.